Welcome to It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is. And today's episode, I am so excited for you to join my conversation with Leslie Randall, a long career in real estate and founder of multiple companies. And she joins me, my kitten, my dog for a deep conversation. Leslie and I cover lots of ground here, very authentic conversation around someone who has accomplished so much and still has a lot of self-reflection to do. And Leslie and I talked about her resilience, the difference between grit and resilience, and still seeking her purpose and meaning. And it was just such an incredible conversation, very brilliant leader, very driven, at a really critical inflection point in her career. And I know that you're really going to relate to this and enjoy the conversation. Thank you and welcome to the episode. Welcome to It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, the awesome podcast where real leaders in the C-suite talk about the real crap we've overcome, what we've learned from it, the mistakes we've made. And I'm so excited to introduce you all to Leslie Randall. Leslie, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Meg, for having me.
And Leslie, you have been in senior leadership roles in real estate for years, currently leading two companies. One, the Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, the Good Life Group. You were the CEO and have transitioned into leading growth and development, and also are the founder of Polaris Podium, which are actually closely related from your journey. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that. But can you just give us a little bit of kind of the arc of your career, how you landed here? Because I find so many people's stories to be so unique and different. And most people say, I never thought I would end up in the C-suite of a company, and whoops, I stumbled into it, right? So how was your journey here?
Yeah, I stumbled through scalability in general, and so building the brokerage from the ground up. So the brokerage right now, we're ranked number 3 in the state of Nebraska, and we have 350 agents and a team of 15 employees and leadership as well. But we started in 10 years ago, actually, with 12 people and one office, and we didn't know what we were doing. And so, but we knew real estate. I've been doing real estate since I was 16 years old. I started and got my license in 2005. I have been in all aspects of real estate, up, down, and all around. And so when I had the opportunity to join a small boutique brokerage and see what I could do with it, it really sounded appealing to me. And so we got in and we had kind of some ups and downs and figuring out what our direction was going to be. And ultimately, it was partnering with Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate because we felt that the brand really fit what we were trying to achieve in our culture too, which I know we'll talk about. And so that brand just really leaned on high quality and taking care of the people. And so throughout that journey, I've done everything in the building from plunging toilets to being in high level executive investor meetings and determining the fate and the direction of what this brokerage in place is going to do. And so I have a very intimate knowledge of building the brokerage in and of itself and also building businesses. And so currently I'm in growth and development, former COO. I took a step back. I wanted to focus on more of the strategy and then also have Polaris Podium, which is personal coaching for real estate and also personally when it comes to women in their careers, kind of struggling through motherhood and developing all the right traits so that you can have both at the same time without sacrificing a lot. Mm-hmm. And then we have another business that I've been working on for the last few years called Senior Sync, which ties in senior living when someone needs to go into a nursing facility and real estate sales because there's not anyone that can handle it from start to finish. And there's so many nuances that go on with it that it makes sense to have one trusted provider versus having to deal with it and figure things out on your own. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. But I grew with the company and I learned so much along the way and I had to figure it out myself. I didn't have anybody telling me what to do and when to do it. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into
Mhm.
developing this brokerage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and Leslie, it sounds like a key theme for you is you see gaps and needs and just from your experience how to step in and solve them, right? And
Yeah, gaps and then processes. Where's the problem and how do we fix it?
yeah. Yeah. So and that's a special kind of genius that I do not have. I am not a systems and process person at all.
That's sometimes only what I can focus on are the problems, which then creates a lot of stress because you're always seeing how you can do it better. So I don't
Mhm.
recommend that route necessarily either. But yes, there's some tact when it comes to figuring out where the gaps are and also being personable within your role too.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes our biggest genius can be also our Achilles, right? When we over apply it. That's what my coach tells me. You've over applied your genius. Isn't that a nice way of saying it?
I'll start using that.
You have definitely a history of resilience where you bite off a lot. You see a problem, you're like, I can solve this. Like we're gonna scale this company, we're gonna start this new company, and I've been through so much as a female leader with kids. I'm gonna start coaching other women and supporting them, and you step right into it. But I find that we tend to bite off something and then go, oh wow, this is a little harder than I thought it would be, or things come up, right? So give us an example of that where you faced something that you did not anticipate would be that hard. What happened and how did you overcome it?
Well, I think I get into my own brain, like you said, I kind of over apply what I'm really good at. And so I look at problems that aren't even there yet. And so sometimes I'm solving for a future problem within the scalability of the business. And so that I've always had a hard time being kind of present in the company. And, but ultimately, really the hardest part was finding, how do you shift when you were a little speedboat and you could just like turn on a dime and now you're this big cruise ship? How do you adjust those things while maintaining the cohesiveness of the actual brokerage and what's happened? And so I've run into that plenty of times where there's certain levels of growth that are just pain points. They really are, for whatever reason, whether it be financially or whether it be process wise or a people issue or a culture problem, it just happens in certain increments. And I've kind of seen that grow around the 75 people mark. It seems
Mhm.
like every 75 people, we have a new problem that comes on board, but that then starts to diminish as you get bigger
Mhm.
too. So
Yep.
then it's more of a slow moving. You have to pay attention to the different whispers that you hear because you can't change things on a dime.
Mhm.
So those small things that you kind of have a sense and a knack for, like start paying attention to those because before you know it, it's going to be an earthquake size problem. But if you can start to see the writing on the wall ahead of time, it really helps in figuring out how to tweak and make small adjustments so that the big goal that you're trying to achieve hasn't been lost and is now this magnificent problem that you have to lose sleep at night for.
Yep. Yep. And I found that too as I was growing a company from like we went from 2 to 95. So I feel like there was like these plateaus, pain, grow, plateau, pain, grow. And
Yes.
you have to up your level of sophistication, basically. Sophistication of your systems and processes, but also your culture, your strategy. You've just got to level up at each point.
Yeah, and what's
Um,
what's needed of you at the time. So what worked as when you were in one level of growth or plateau doesn't necessarily work in the next level. And so you have to really internalize, how can I show up today in the space that's needed of me today, not last year. So that evolution for me came pretty naturally until we got to a certain level. And I kind of just could not see the forest for the trees. I couldn't see it anymore. And I was just lost in the minutia.
okay. And you transitioned out of the COO role. Is that where you did that transition? You felt like you were just too sucked into the weeds and you needed to come back up into a more strategic role?
Yeah, I realized at that point I was very burnt out, having done this for, I mean, it was close to 10 years at the time. I got too burnt out because I was doing so many things and so many roles. And part of what I'm really good at is developing systems and procedures so that we can keep payroll down. So I was always constantly putting more on my plate and more on everyone else's plate so that we didn't have to hire someone else, because that comes with a lot of other shifts, not just the dollar amount, but it comes with the culture amount. It comes with having to train and take time from your day to day to train this new person and how they're going to fit and where they're going to go. And so I just kind of avoided it like the plague. And it turned around and bit me in the butt a lot. And I wouldn't say I burnt out some of my employees, but I think there was a level of frustration that came with not necessarily knowing where their role was and what other tasks that were outside of that role being assigned to them, that caused some friction and that hurt the culture.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, um, in talking about culture, right? Like let's dive into that a little bit because as we all know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you love strategy. Like you said, you're really the visionary. We're scaling, we're growing. You're always looking 2 to 5 years out, right? And then it can be the people friction that slows you down. And so how can you give us an example of how you've seen cultural issues start to bubble up that you knew were going to hold you back? How have you been proactive in identifying the issue? What was it? And how did you work on that to reshape the culture?
Yeah, and I'll disagree with you. I don't think that culture eats strategy for breakfast
Okay.
because you already identified I'm a strategy person, but big time, I'm more of a culture person. And that comes through in two different ways. Because I think as we really started out, people came to us because of the culture, because we were different, because we were high quality, because we did the right things at the right times, and we really knew how to run a business. And so we needed the culture because strategy wasn't there. We were growing so quickly.
Okay.
So, in the absence of strategy, culture is a necessity.
Yeah.
But once you start scaling, the culture starts to fade without the processes and the operations to make sure that it's running as a very efficient cog in the wheel.
Mhm.
And so I would say culture is extremely important when you're developing it, but at the same time, you cannot let the actual efficiency of your business slide because you want to have the culture of the business feel better. You can have both.
Yeah.
And I think they both go hand in hand and are both really necessary. You can't have one without the other if you're going to have a successful business.
Yep. Yep. So, what's an example of a cultural challenge or people issue that is that because most people that I know that doggedly focus on culture do so because we've had problems and we know that having a really good culture, right, is a way to protect against some human dysfunction or friction or just, human behaviors, attitudes, interactions not working well for a company. And it sounds like you did a really good job of figuring out what kind of a culture would work. Where have you been a part of cultural dynamics that weren't working? What did that look like?
Oh, I stubbed my toe big time as we were scaling up because I I never wanted to have someone not enjoy coming to work. And I really empowered my employees to be excited and to take on new roles and to try new things. And, we're not going to track PTO. We're going to have, if you need time off, just take time off. And we want everybody to be this like warm, fuzzy family. And, that worked really well at first. But as we grew offices, so we went from one and now we have six. So you have a spread of people that aren't in the office at the same time. And so that really hits on the culture as well.
Uh-huh.
And especially when there are certain people that are there for the culture, but there's certain people that are there because they want to be there and they like the operational efficiency and they like to be told, this is what I need to do. And these are the expectations for me. And somebody else might be like, I having expectations put on me. I hate having this. I believe in the business and I believe in this, and I'm staying in what my expertise level is and are making leaps and bounds. So I didn't plan for different mindsets other than culture. And what I found is that as we grew, we needed to have more people that were more tactile
Uh-huh.
and didn't care about the culture, but they needed a good space to be in. It's not like
Right.
nobody wants to work in a toxic workplace, but there were certain levels that I didn't realize I needed to have so much more definition in place than I did. And that really bit me later on when I needed to fix a lot of cultural problems, because then the nagging kind of starts, then someone's upset, or certain things are starting to bother one person that didn't bother them before, and it's all an underlying issue. People don't have cultural problems unless they have a problem with something else. So it's so easy to dive in and say, well, it's because I don't like the people. Well, are you frustrated because it's a part of your work and your space and it's not, something's broken in the wheel? Or is it because this person really just did have a bad day and said something that they shouldn't have said?
Mm-hmm.
And so the biggest issues that I've had is people management when it comes to drama, friction, problems within the workplace that are not something that I can just look at and go, okay, here's how to fix this problem, do X, Y, and Z. There's more massaging that needs to come with it. And that was really part of why I stepped down from my position previously, was because I realized I'm just not that great with people. I love people. I want people to be, I built this company to be something where people wanted to convene towards. But I realized that in the day to day, I wasn't good at managing that. And so I'm more in the growth and the strategy portion of things, and let somebody else that's really good at making sure that when somebody's cat dies, that they're there to hug them, support them, and reward when they've done something good, and just be that HR influence in a positive way that I could just never do on my own very effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we all have our gifts and shiny spots, right? And I've seen with all leaders, it's half and half, and you're one, or either your strengths are really in that warm people side of things where you're super intuitive and attuned to people's needs ongoing, right? Or you're more of that strategist, visionary, goal process person. And we all lean toward one or the other. And then we try to make up our deficits and do some of this stuff over here too. But if you're not naturally inclined to do that, and that's what you're doing with most of your time, then you're going to get drained, right? So I totally get it. And as a fellow person who's not super naturally oriented toward the people side or high in empathy, I had to work really hard toward that. And I always chose more of strategy and visionary roles, where on the side I had to do the people part and work really hard
Yeah.
at it.
It is really hard if you don't have a knack for it. And there's a difference between, so in what I was talking about was, the 15 people team, but we have 350 plus agents right now, and they're all independent contractors. And so my face with them and my persona with them is so much different
Mm-hmm.
than it is with an employee. And sometimes that has friction in and of itself, because I can't tell these independent contractors what to do on a regular basis, but they're coming to us for guidance in
Mm-hmm.
the real estate space when it's needed. And sometimes that friction does come with an overlap in the employee space and the agent space.
Yeah.
And so then you have to manage through, how are you handling basically an issue where both parties come out feeling like they are in a good space, and that they've maybe not won, but they feel better, they feel heard, and they
Mm-hmm.
feel like the problem could be resolved, or they have directions and paths towards making it resolvable.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's going to be a tension for you in your business between those two, right? So it's sort of like
Absolutely.
in another company, be like your shareholders or other stakeholders versus employees or employee wants and needs versus clients, customers. There's tension that we have to navigate at senior leadership levels and trying to make everyone feel like they're heard, valued, and their needs are getting met is it's a delicate walk. Right? So, and some of us, that's where our big lessons are. I know I've really stepped in it there and made some mistakes where I'm trying to figure out how to manage some of those tensions and conflicts and make hard choices that I know aren't going to be popular. So I'm curious, Leslie, too, like can you think of scenarios where looking back, you're like, oh, that's like that was a growth area for me. That scenario came up and I had to learn something really difficult there. So where's a situation like that for you where you realized you were kind of battling an old mindset or a gap in skills or even something about your personality that you had to really surface and overcome and develop about yourself so that you'd be more effective in your role?
Yeah, that would have been in 2017 going into 2018. There was a span of time where we were growing so quickly. We onboarded 75 agents, we opened 3 offices, and in that time frame, I had a baby and my husband got sick and ultimately passed away. And so we had this big growth spurt within the brokerage, and I had this big breakdown personally. And I had to figure out how every single day I can be there for my family and for the brokerage in every way that was needed. And so I developed a mantra of get up, dress up, show up. So every single day you need to get up, you need to dress for success. I hate to say it that way, but you need to get dressed. Whatever is going to get you in a confidence mindset, get dressed, and then show up. Really, like when you are working, really be present. Don't get sucked down into what your personal life is happening because you don't have the mental space to do it. So get up, dress up, show up, and then ultimately you can make it through almost anything.
Yeah, so I can imagine that took a lot of grit being faced not only with what's like the penultimate business challenge of super fast growth at the same time as like a major life crisis that most people don't even experience in their lives. And you had to do whatever it took to get through that. You probably, I imagine, developed a lot of resilience and learned a lot about yourself.
Yeah, there
Um,
wasn't really an option. There was not an option, unless I wanted to step down at that time, which I wasn't ready to, that, diving into my work, and the support, and we go back to culture and the family feel, I had 175 agents that were banding around me during that time and understanding and seeing all of it. I mean, I would be taking my 1-year-old into the office with me to just kind of get a few things done. And, they'd all be all over little Tegan, just loving on her and being extremely supportive. And so, having not built that space and that, gathering those types of empathetic people, I would have never been able to do what I did because it just wouldn't be possible.
mhm.
But ultimately, it made me stronger. It made me better. I wouldn't say I was a better mom at the time because I was putting work so much at the forefront. But, that's why last year I really did decide to take a step back
Mhm.
because I finally had the time between Brian's passing and the work and the brokerage stabilizing that I went, I can't run on all cylinders all the time and be a good mom.
Yeah.
And my kiddos have already lost a lot of years where I've been on the phone, I've been working until 9 o'clock at night. My oldest knew my phone number when she was like 3 because I was on the phone so much, like, call me back at 402. She would just be able to spout it off. So I'm able to kind of take some time now to reestablish what that looks like. And that was not easy. That really was not. But I knew that a year or so before that, I was starting to not enjoy the work anymore.
Mhm.
And it ties back into, what does my role look like? And if I'm so people focused, but it's not really in my wheelhouse,
Mhm.
how am I serving these employees and agents
Yeah.
while also serving myself if
Mhm.
I'm not great at it?
Yep.
And so that was a really hard conversation. I took a few months off to just kind of get back into it. And, it's still not easy. It's still not, I'm never going to be back to that COO level that I was in this space, but
Mhm.
that's okay. I'm finding what this new pathway is. And sometimes, as hard as it was, taking a step back was the best decision for me.
Mhm.
And it's already built. Like I built it. The culture's there. It just somebody can come in and change the wallpaper, right? Like you can and just make it your own, paint a counter, change some wallpaper, theoretically, and make it your own within what we've already established. It's there. So I felt comfortable enough where there weren't gaps where
Mhm.
I could just say, okay, here's where I want to focus on now.
Yeah, Leslie, I'm so glad that you walked through that because I think a lot of us are confusing grit with resilience. And there's a time for grit. You had to have a lot of grit. Like you said, you didn't have much of a choice. And grit is it's taking the hits. I can take hits and still move forward and get up and get dressed and be present. But resilience is stopping and going, time out. I need to reevaluate this, like this hardship, this obstacle, and maybe get a little creative and admit it's time for a new approach. Maybe it's not ideal for me to be the COO of this company. Like maybe a major change is needed here, and that's resilience, right? When we're willing to look at things like that and make a really hard choice. And I feel like a lot of us really lack the courage to face that when it's time to face it. We put it off. We don't want to have to go to people and disappoint them or really look at ourselves honestly and admit this isn't for me and I can still add immense value to this company without being in this role. And I when people are able to come to that decision, I think we should all be throwing parties and celebrating that level of resilience. It's rare and it's incredibly difficult.
Well, there was no party being thrown. It was what do we do now? And so, but that's that scary part of, in your role, especially in building a business, what people expect of you on a
Mhm.
daily basis. And then when that presence isn't there,
Mhm.
it really shows up. And so, yeah, for me, I realized I could be serving the brokerage, the agents, the employees better by not being in this position. But that was a 6 month process of kind of regaining traction again so that it didn't feel as hard as it was. And my mental headspace is so much clearer now. It's amazing the difference and how much stress was ruling my life,
Mhm.
my marriage, my family,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of it, because I was trying to just white knuckle through things when the brokerage had outgrown me and I had outgrown the position in different ways that I didn't feel possible staying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like going through some those experiences has shaped you. Like obviously I'm a fan of adversity in that it shapes who we are, right? We gain wisdom, we gain strength, and now because of that, you're able to provide some support and coaching toward other female leaders who are at crossroads and support them through something that, you wouldn't have been able to be in that role had you not had this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Or having just my interactions with people are so much different because I don't have that level of stress.
Yeah.
And that's what we started the business on was people first. And so once you get to that point where it can't be people first or you're not putting yourself first, then it really something needs to be able to shift, even though those
Mhm.
conversations are really hard to have.
Mhm.
And you have to know what direction you're leaning towards because there's no going back at certain points when you say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do this thing. Well, what if that thing doesn't work for you?
Mhm.
You can't go back. So that's a really big step to take on and go, okay, am I really sure this is the way I'm gonna go? And I wasn't. I really wasn't. I didn't know what was gonna happen, after I did that.
Mhm.
And it's worked out. I'm still working on quite a few things, but it's given me the opportunity to work on a couple of other businesses as well
Right.
that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do,
Mhm.
or I would have tried to muscle through it and do all of those things and then really have the sacrifice from trying to serve two masters essentially.
Yeah. And really what you're doing is living the values that you've tried to instill within the company. That,
Tried to. I don't know. There's still lots of room for improvement and growth in all capacities, but it was best and what was time for me.
that leads me to another question. Like a lot of us, people would look at you and say, she's been in the C-suite and she started these other two companies and oh, she's at the pinnacle of leadership. Like she's reached so much success and you've done all this personal growth. But I want to ask that challenging question of, what is the next area of growth for you, do you think, so that you could be at that next level of like really optimally fulfilled by your job and having the kind of influence you really want to have on others on a daily basis with very little stress? Like, what do you see as this next area of growth for yourself?
Well, that's a good question. I'm kind of trying to figure that out too. So, I'm lucky in a sense that I get to have the leisurely time to work on these companies.
Mhm.
The growth is starting to come in one of them, but ultimately for me, what that next step is, I'm 40 now. I don't necessarily know, but what I do know is that anytime that I would look at any project or any role was, am I okay doing this until the end of time? Like, am I going to be satisfied doing this for the next 25 years? And if the answer is no, that's kind of where I got to last year was like, I am not satisfied doing this right now. And so I'm in the process of figuring out what that looks like and what that space is, and what my next endeavor within the brokerage is even going to be, because there's plenty of spaces. I love where I'm at right now because it is in short bursts and there's projects, there's mergers, acquisitions, we've got agent growth, development, all these different things. And so it's new projects. It's not everything the same every single day. I could never go back to everything is the same every day, all the time, forever. So that's what's next for me is finding out how I can continue to be satisfied in my roles while making sure that I'm providing the most impact in those spaces as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a cool place to be. It's
It's
a fun place to be.
sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad because, when one of the struggles that I deal with is that I'm not going in 9 to 5 anymore. And so sometimes I get stuck in my own head and can't quite get to the space where I feel like I'm contributing. And then that kind of spirals out into, well, you've never been good at this anyways. Why would anybody hire you for anything? It's that mental drain and space where you get tied into
Mhm.
if you don't have a purpose and a pathway.
Mhm.
And so I'm finding my purpose and path so that all those negative connotations that we all do, I think everyone does if they're getting to a level that in the C-suite, there's always doubt. Um, so just trying to find, do I love this? Is this my purpose? And can I do this for the rest of my life and enjoy it?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. You know, sometimes I think like people also evolve. We evolve our whole lives. So I'm a different person than I was a year or two ago. And so you have to like check back in and say, is this still making me happy? I remember a mentor of mine, I came to her and I was like, this is it. I found the thing I can do for the rest of my life. She goes, Meg, that's not you. You're always going to need a new challenge. Right. And so, yeah, I know that you think you've landed, but I know you too well. In 5 years, you're going to go, now that I figured this out, I need something new. So it's
Yep.
also allowing yourself to just check back in and go, what really brings me joy now?
Yeah.
And admit it and let go of some of those old traditional notions of trading your time for value. You're not doing that anymore. You're not a paycheck person, right? You're delivering value into an economy in a few different ways. You're an owner, you have equity. It's just a different life. And so pull out of those old traditional mindsets of I've got to work 40 hours a week to be a contributor and I'm the same person I was 5 years ago. No, you're not. And no, you don't.
If you ask my dad, he would disagree with that.
Yeah. Right. Well,
Definitely. Yes.
what's funny is I was at a conference and there was a very, very successful, multimillionaire, bought and sold a bunch of companies. He was talking to his dad, and his dad said, your resume doesn't look good because it seems like you're just going from thing to thing to thing, and that's not, no one's going to want to hire you. And he's like, Dad, you don't understand.
I'm
I'm
not looking to
a
be hired.
Yeah, like I'm unemployable and you don't understand my resume and the space I'm playing in now, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a different paradigm. And yet we
absolutely.
still slip back into judging ourselves by old paradigms. Yeah,
It's hard to get away from sometimes, that's for sure.
it is. It is. So, you are finding what gives you joy, right? Your purpose and looking at Better Homes and Gardens, the group as it's growing and evolving and where you want to have your influence. Where do you see, the team, what is needed for it to be optimized for where the company needs to be in 5 years? That's always where your mind is. What do you see as some of those growth areas for the company or the leadership team? And how would you want to contribute to that?
Yeah, so I think in the next 5 years, we're in a space where we're completely dependent on the market. So sometimes it's hard to predict what that is.
Yep.
But ultimately, in the space that we've created, is we've got to create and have more operational structure and communication when it comes to what we're working on and why.
Okay.
Because oftentimes we can have conversations with employees, but we don't give them the why we're doing it
Hmm.
or the reasoning for it. And so sometimes that can get lost if
Hmm.
they're just feeling it as another task. So the level of communication and the why needs to come back so that the culture can maintain. And as long as the culture can maintain, then that's really where you've won.
Absolutely. Cool. Cool. Okay, so my last question for you is if you could go back in time, if I had a secret time machine, you could go back and talk with yourself 10 or 15 years ago. What advice would you give yourself?
That's a really hard question because I don't know if I would want to go back to myself and say it's going to be really hard and really difficult, but just get through it because I don't know if that would have been the best advice. I probably would have said, no, thank you. I'm not signing up for all of this. But ultimately, going back on it is finding a good place that you like to work. Just find that space and work with the right people. You have to have the right people and you always have to be striving for more. And I would always tell that person that the more education you have, the better. Be knowledgeable about everything that you can get your hands on when it comes to the industry because that is going to differentiate you from anybody else. You're going to know the answer before somebody else even asks the question. And so that's extremely important. But I would, I guess I'd tell her it's all going to be okay, but I don't know that just specifically right now.
Yeah, you have had a really unique and bumpy path, right?
It's
But,
very I'm still going through the bumps. So
I think what you're also expressing is that what you found is, as long as you're learning and challenged and working with people that you enjoy working with to do something meaningful, that's really what matters, right?
it really
All the
is.
rest is secondary.
Yeah. Trust and in who you're working for is huge. And
Mhm.
I really, when we went through COVID, we saw other brokerages laying off employees. And so we took on during that time frame, we were like, we are never going to be overly staffed so that we would be in a position if a market turned again that we would have to let someone go. because that's not who we are. And so that trusting who you're working for and knowing that, because I've heard too many, especially after, like I said, after COVID, is that, you saw these companies where people thought, oh, I'm never going to get fired. There's never going to be layoffs. But then the world changed.
Mhm.
And then suddenly you weren't as important as you necessarily thought you were. So I always lean towards, knowing who you're working for, not just your managers, really getting to know your owners if you have an opportunity to, if you're not running the business.
Mhm.
You need to be knowing what they're thinking so that you can anticipate what they need as well to help get that insight as to, what direction we're moving forward, and having that reputational value of being a hard worker, doing and aligning with the company's vision, and also just being seen. Sometimes you just need to be seen versus and be the first person to raise your hand and volunteer for something, even if it's outside of the scope of what you're supposed to be doing. Raise your hand and take on a new something, and people will recognize that, and not just the owners, or investors, but your other employees and your coworkers are going to see that you stood up and you said, I will do this thing that nobody wanted to do.
Mhm.
And that goes a really, really long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that does seem to be a theme as I talk to all of these senior leaders and all my clients, is that a lot of them are the people who are willing to do what other people didn't want to do, and just stick their neck out and go the extra mile. And that's ultimately what's going to lead to the advancement in your career, because you're going to be able to deliver more value to any company or any economy. And this is all essentially just a value exchange. That's what work is. That's what businesses are. So make yourself more valuable, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I think that that's important. What value you bring, especially the longer that you're in business, there should be an expectation of value that you provide.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Leslie, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to have you here. And thank you for your authenticity. I think a lot of people don't have these kinds of conversations, but it's what's going on in a lot of our personal struggles. And so thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Meg. I appreciate it.